So hello again. Tonight, the topic is imported, delivered, or homegrown. And I'm referring to sentient life on this planet. Did we get it from elsewhere? If we got it from elsewhere, was it accidental or purposefully delivered? Or is the real reason it took a lot longer, but it's all homegrown? I will say there's little doubt that sentient life exists on this planet. I won't say there's no doubt, because some people doubt that we're all that sentient. But I like to think of sentient as capable of numerous feats, reproducing, upright, fine dexterity and manipulation of objects. You know, we don't have big, cumbersome paws, so we can work with finely detailed things. And if that's not good enough, we can make instruments that make, where we can move microscopic things around. We can stand, we can walk, we can run. We have audible communication, as I'm doing right now, in multiple language, and some people are actually polyglots and can do multiple languages themselves. We have visual perception. We can recognize familiar objects from new objects, different shapes. We can recognize, classify them. We have recorded documentation, multiple languages, and the equivalent in writing to being a polyglot is called a multiliterate, and we have people that are multiliterate. We have reading comprehension. You can put something recorded out there, somebody can read it and understand what it means or take a good guess at it. We have multi-generational education. We like to take what we used to know and then pass it on to the next ones coming up. So they hopefully will have the same baseline and can grow on from there. Not every generation has to reset from zero. We have the ability to study and rationalize systems. We can look out at the universe and go, it's more than just pinpoints of light in the sky. I need to learn more about it. We have multiple forms of artistic expression, from just documenting reality to fantasy to, impressionism. We have the ability to create solutions to large-scale problems. We can work with large-scale components. We can build big rockets. We can build, fusion power test facilities, big stuff. We can work with large scale things that are just large quantities of the same thing over and over and over again, like mobile phone networks. Many of those sentient folks are capable of learning new things, particularly when they're young. Some are capable of learning from their mistakes. Usually it's when they have motivation to do so, typically financially. Despite all the shortcomings, humans are the dominant species on the planet, not the most prolific. The most prolific might be plankton, but they're not going to build any rocket ships. Dominant as in, we do what we want to do with this planet, sometimes good, sometimes bad. We just do it because we have the power, reasoning, and authority, and we don't care what the elephant in the corner says. But where did we come from? What is the source of us? And that's what we're going to get into. So let's classify the intelligence that we're dealing with here, because there are earlier species on this planet that we don't think of as quite sentient, quite intelligent. Let's compare that with some of the people that we're roaming around with. Sufficiently intelligent to drive motor vehicles on expressways at high speed and not constantly running into each other and creating accidents. Yeah, I'd say that's sufficiently intelligent, because we don't have all cars doing that yet. So it seems to be reasonably intelligent. We have people that, strangely enough, can walk around with devices and record pictures and video and audio and text and send that to known destinations, to other people, places, capable of using smartphones and typical computers. Not well-versed, not advanced, just reasonably capable. We have people that know how to board an airplane based upon waving their mobile phone app over the ticket reader. They can buy things, credit. They know the distinctions between credit, debit, and gift cards. And some people that do travel internationally can't even deal with multinational cash and coins. But although they have all those capabilities, we still have to be defensive drivers all the time, because you never know when somebody less astute or impaired is going to be driving recklessly, and you don't want to get into an accident. So yes, there are a lot of people driving on the highways, not running into each other all the time. But then there's that occasional one you have to watch out for. Still human, still sentient, but not at the top of the intelligence heap. And then you have people that create inane social media sites, conspiracy theories, flat earthers, all those kinds of things, where here's your facts. Ignore that. I want to believe what I want to believe. Okay, yeah, that's a sentient being. There are people out there that are no longer capable of comprehending change when purchasing in cash. Now, I used to just think it was we can't find cashiers, clerks behind the counter that can deal with cash. And yes, that's a problem. But now we have something even worse. I've watched somebody pay in cash, get their cash back, and look in their hand, and all they thought they were supposed to get back were bills, and they got back some of these round metal things, and they didn't know how to count them. Like, really? So there are people that have been using cards and apps and don't know how to count their own change. I just found that to be fascinating. And they're driving on the highways out there with us. There's a segment of society that is unable to manage finances. Now, I'm not talking about people who don't have the money or who are down and, literally don't have the money. I'm talking about people that have an income, maybe a, husband, wife, spouse income, have a reasonable amount of money coming in, but can't comprehend that. Why did you buy a house that's that expensive when now you're underwater because the economy changed and you don't know what to do? You buy a car that's too expensive, you don't realize you can't afford it, and then it comes time for it to be repossessed. Or you go buy a condo and then it gets foreclosed on because you can make the monthly payments for the loan, but you don't realize that there's an additional monthly payment you need to make to the condo owners association. And now you can't afford your condo anymore. You have people that are buying, boats, planes, jewelry, watches, and they don't know that, those are assets. And in some states, you have to pay taxation on the assets that you have. Not in Florida, but in other states. And you have to pay that every year. I remember it being a shock. I had an aunt that lived in the state of Virginia, and every year she had to pay a tax on her vehicle based upon the resale value of her used vehicle every year. So as the value of the vehicle went down, if you just pay what you paid last year, you're paying too much. State of Virginia wouldn't tell you, you just thanks for the money. So I showed her how to reevaluate what your car's worth is every year and then pay less and less tax. So let's think about the possible ways that this sentient, intelligent life came into being on this planet. There were three different approaches I could think of. One is imported, basically brought here with a forethought of purpose, a labor force, mining, farming, whatever, move this over there. Maybe they needed some genetic alteration to adapt them to this planet, or maybe to make them more obedient and yet still capable of autonomous tasking. Every time I tell you go move something, I don't have to tell you what moving something means. You're clever enough to do that. But then if I want you to comprehend things in the universe, it would take you hundreds of thousands of years of improving education before you would comprehend such things. To you, they're just points of light in the sky. And that may be sufficient for the labor force. Eventually, after a small number of thousands of years, you get to us. Now, given that it's only a small number of thousands of years from when we were dropped off and adapted, that's the fastest turnaround to get where we are today. The fastest way to get to what we have today is if somebody brought the basic model, not the building blocks, the basic model, and then adapted it for here. Delivered. There's two approaches here. There's panspermia, accidental delivery, collisions, comets, asteroids, delivering the basic building blocks, the organic building materials. And then we still had to develop the life here. So that's going to take millions of years to evolve from single cell organisms to the most dominant species on the planet. Bringing the raw materials here is kind of like a cosmic Kickstarter, whether it was accidental or brought here as like Johnny Appleseed of planets. And then there's the homegrown. This is, we needed no help from anything else out there in the universe. We did it all here. This is something called abiogenesis, likely taking billions of years to go from non-organic to organic, and then organic into single cell, and then organized multiple cell, and then primitive life forms. And it just gets longer and longer and longer and longer, with some resets along the way. There's this thing called Occam's razor that, everything being equal, the simplest solution is usually the correct one. Not always, but it's a good direction to rationalize something when somebody suggests an approach or imported from elsewhere, brought the initial model here. That's the easiest, the fastest. Delivered by panspermia, either inadvertently by chance or deliberately, that's like the next slowest one. Given all the possibilities and all the vastness of the cosmos, are we the only ones that were accidentally created through panspermia? Just us, really? And given that there's somewhat intelligent species on this planet, you can think of chimps, apes, crows, parrots, any number of things on the planet that seem to be relatively capable of recognizing different things, manipulating objects in their environment, being taught things. How do we wind up being the best? Like, not the best, but certainly the most dominant. And no competition? Or maybe we got rid of the competition and didn't record that. And then there's the homegrown approach. Does that really fit? That's the most complex. It takes billions of years of random chance, likely only a very few in the cosmos, if you want to go with random chance, maybe uniquely us. Abiogenesis is the most complex approach. Lots of things have to go right over a very long period of time in order to wind up with us. If you have this many avenues, some may win, some may not win, but you should still see lots of avenues, and we don't. We see like, okay, we're the dominant species, and what's the next dominant species? They have some behaviors, but they're not anywhere close to us. It'd be like saying, if I go on Wall Street and I look at financial firms, there's a number of financial firms. There's probably one that's dominant, but there's a bunch of other ones too that are all reasonably close to being dominant. We don't see that with the human species on this planet. We're a number one, and number two is like down a considerable number of rungs. If you're going to ignore what Occam's razor is attempting to tell you, then the next thing is why? Why are you not, coming to grips with the simplest solution usually is the right one? It's because we've got biases. There are people that are frightened of knowing an answer that they don't want to be the answer. We've got less open-minded people, entrenched behaviors, entrenched governing systems. So if all of a sudden somebody else was in charge and we just ignored that, what are the downsides of that? If you were to go out to the general public and say, we're imported, we came from over there, they brought us in, we were a good labor force, and they genetically modified us, and this is us. The general response would be, that's impossible. Because it's impossible, because if it weren't impossible, if it were possible, that would mean there's some intelligence out there that brought us into existence. That would say, like, well, our fate's not our own. We're not in control of ourselves, that there's something else out there that made this happen, and they could come back at any time and want control. Like, no, it's just impossible. What if the raw materials were delivered here? Panspermia. The raw materials were delivered here either accidentally or deliberately. That would mean it could happen anywhere in the cosmos. That would mean we're not interestingly unique. We're just yet another planet that has life on it. Maybe, countless light years separating them, but that means in just this galaxy, there could be many millions of planets with sentient life on them, just incapable currently of interacting with us. Delivered accidentally or delivery raw materials, it's not impossible, because there's a lot of people that have heard about panspermia and say that's a possibility. So it's implausible, but not impossible. Homegrown, as I was, brought up and educated, is the only tolerable answer. We had to have made it here, because if it came from elsewhere, that means there's an elsewhere that has something that we don't have here, or controls that we don't have here. And we don't want that. No. So homegrown is the only, for the general population, including scientists, the only tolerable answer. I look at it the other way. This is completely inverted to what Occam's razor would tell you. The most complicated, the longest, the one that has the most random chance of failure is the one that everybody seems to be focused on. And here's what I think it comes down to is either sort of ignoring the elephant in the room, or not wanting to think about it because it might come away with the answer you don't want to be the answer. If we're imported, then that would mean we were brought here as a labor force. We were coerced to reproduce prodigiously, and cross-tribe reproduction was discouraged. Don't mix with those types, and everything will be great. We needed a greater workforce, so go forth and multiply. Now, once whoever brought us here, we're done with this, much like humans do today for various things, abandoned, became feral, left to reproduce without bound across tribes. So you get a blending of all the different specific things that are now the human species. And we wound up, because there was nobody here to stop us, being the dominant invasive species on the planet with no competitors. Think about it. We went from none to 8+ billion people on the planet in roughly less than 20,000 years. And that's inclusive of wars, technological setbacks, cosmic interruptions, pandemics, and we're still dominant. Here's the analogous items that we know exist in our own sociology. Import things, prodigious reproduction without controls becomes rapidly dominant over others in that environment. Iguanas in South Florida. Okay, they're going to eat bird eggs. If iguanas were brought in as pets and now they're unchecked, this is what you get. Pythons, Burmese pythons in the Florida Everglades, same thing. They were brought in as pets. How about cane toads? There's a long list of these. How did cane toads get to Florida? Well, they were brought in for dealing with pests that were associated with sugarcane growing. But what they didn't figure out was, the pest you're trying to control runs around in the daytime and the toads are nocturnal. So the toads reproduced prodigiously and didn't take out the thing you brought them in for. This is a recurring theme with the human species of bringing things out of one environment where it's meant to control something into another environment. And not only does the control not work, but the thing you brought in becomes the invasive species. All sorts of little things like anoles versus chameleons, geckos, another form of small lizards, tegus. These are much larger lizards. I won't say monitor lizard size, but let's say a quarter of monitor lizard size. How about wild hogs? There are places where farmers can't grow their crops because the wild hog population feeds off of their crops and roots up and destroys them. So they pay people to go capture and eliminate wild hogs. Even in Florida, there's hog hunts. There's python hunts. Simpler things, not even animals, trees. Australian pines were brought into South Florida to drain the Everglades around agricultural areas. Who knew they were a respiratory hazard to some people? Who knew they would grow so prodigiously? about Brazilian pepper plants? As I remember it, they were brought in accidentally with cargo on ships and just blossomed out from there. Melaleuca trees, same as the Australian pine, suck up that water, plant them along the edge of agricultural zones. And here's other ones that were brought in because they were appealing to look at. Lionfish, eels, tilapia. Yep, tilapia, the thing that's so good in restaurants, and it's very plentiful, which makes it cheap. So those are all familiar examples of one species, the dominant one on the planet, not being smart enough and bringing in another species that then overruns that environment. But why should humans be exempt from that concept? Let's say that there's an extraterrestrial race out there that needed a labor force. They had some basic labor individuals, and they brought them to this planet, and then they genetically altered them to better survive, better take commands on this planet, and did their bidding. And then when they got their work done, don't need you anymore. Just let them run loose. They won't survive on their own. Ha ha ha, foolish. No, we became the dominant species on the planet. So sure, abiogenesis is a possibility, but it need not be the case. So in conclusion, sentient life obviously exists on this planet. We have proof. We do Zoom sessions. The uniformity of intelligence could stand some scrutiny. I don't think we're going to get everybody the same level. It's gray. A lot of people don't deal with the fact that it's gray. It's gray from sentience. It's also gray financially, capability, physical capability. And we have a bad experience with trying to deal with that grayness. But how did this planet wind up with any sentient life? Imported? A biological starter kit, panspermia, whether it was accidental or directed? Or did it start on Earth, the abiogenesis? There was nothing here. We know that if you mix the right chemicals together, the right geologic chemicals together, and the presence of certain gases and electrical discharges, you can create the precursors to genetic material, the enzymes and such. So chemically, physics, science says, yes, this can happen. But we haven't had the time to take that from that step even to like multi-celled organisms, like hydras that adhere to the bottom of the ocean floor and then grab things as they float by. We've not taken the foundational evolving of life from chemistry to organized organized multicellular things.
That is the pivot point.
Yeah. If you can't make it past that point, you're never going to get to the us. And so far, they've not reproduced the going from the chemistry to the DNA to the multi-cell organisms. So maybe we were just brought here for some purpose, no information about that, left behind, bred prodigiously, dogmatic commandments to say, go forth and multiply. We need more laborers. And then when we were left behind, we became the feral hogs of the planet. The real reason why that's a completely unacceptable answer is human ego. That can't be the answer. Like Luke Skywalker saying, no, it's not possible for you to be my father because I don't want that to be the case. Well, evaluate that. And then lots of links. And this is where you find out who are these off-worlders that brought us here. That would be the Anunnaki. Who was it that genetically modified us? That would be the descendants of the Anunnaki. What is this thing called panspermia? And then if you're not familiar with this guy named Darwin, Origin of Species. And then the long history of the Earth. And then if you want to go through what Helen normally would STEM educate people on, Earth timeline, that will go from like chemistry to the single cell, to the multi-cell, to the primitive, to more and more and more advanced until us. So there's a continuous timeline. And then if you want to know what that fancy word abiogenesis is, and then the root of the evil, the Y-files, the Panspermia video, and it was titled, "We Are the Aliens," which is what I'm fond of saying. Like, where are all these extraterrestrials? Well, we're the extraterrestrials. And if you want to see that that's ever appeared in science fiction literature, there was a movie that had 3 episodes, starred Rock Hudson, had to do with Mars.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. We Are the Aliens.
Martian Chronicles.
Yes, Martian Chronicles by, who's the author?
Oh, the big man.
Well, he wasn't that big. I used to occasionally meet him at book fairs, book trade show events, and he was notorious for walking around in what looked like a safari outfit with shorts. Bradley, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're the aliens.
The thing to do is read it before it was a movie. Then,
well,
I liked it.
People will say the movie spoiled the book. I look at it the other way around and say, if I've never read the book, then reading the book would spoil the movie. Different.
Good movie too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was actually a TV miniseries.
Yeah.
Back in the day, they used to do those very well. Okay, so I thought this would be a fun thing to like poke at people's minds, especially when it gets released to the public. Any thoughts? Any questions?
Well, you bring up sentient life as an important thing. To me, I always keep this on the back burner in my brain. Life in general, just the beginnings, the origins, must be just an unbelievable miracle, or statistically a miracle.
If it is homegrown, it is statistically improbable. That's why I said Occam's razor said the easiest way, the shortest duration way is if we're brought here. The answers are there if we don't mind the answer being something we don't want it to be.
Monroe, do you find that I think that science has changed over the last 30 years, and that people seem to be more open to different things. And I'm wondering if they're more open. I actually have 2 comments or questions in a sense. I want to know if science in general, or if you're saying mainline is still very strict and does not look at there's a possibility of something else. And also, if we find out that we are delivered from another being came and dropped us off, well, there still isn't the answer to life. We're going to have to ask those people if they figured out where they came from, right?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, but first we have to come to grips with the rationalization that they possibly exist. And I think that's the first hurdle.
And I think that science has gotten a little bit more open since we are now, open to the fact not UFOs. I can't remember the new terminology. Mm-hmm. What is it? What is the abbreviation? What?
UAPs?
Yeah.
Unidentified anomalous phenomena.
Anomalous, yes.
Yes.
So they're a little bit more open than they were.
We went from UFOs to, no, this is not like any of that stuff, to UAPs where A stood for aerial. Yeah. And then somebody said, what about the fact that they go into the water and they come flying up out of the water?
Right.
Nobody wanted to make it like UA and USP, or, submersible. Like, what if we just call them anomalous? Then we can have airborne, space, and underwater. Right.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Yeah, it covers everything.
So I like that.
It's all encompassing. So whatever observation you come up with, they now have a 3-letter acronym it's one of them. So, but as far as entrenched goes, the Osiris complex, the people that govern what is identified as Egyptian history don't want to admit to the fact that that complex is older than any other pyramid in Egypt. And it's not like a rudimentary pyramid with like, rounded corners and, mud hut. This is solid stone, not limestone, granite. You're not going to be carving this stuff up with your copper chisels.
No, it is precisely cut, very precise.
Yeah. So,
Yes, mighty interesting.
As long as the people in charge of what defines Egyptian history are saying, no, it's just like any other pyramid in Egypt, same old, same old. Their definition works. But the moment that somebody points out, like, did you look at this? No, we haven't got time to look at that. It's just like anything else. That's why I say we have the tools. Let's use the tools. Oh, but the agencies that control the tools, that have the money to spend to do the analysis, oh no, we're going to spend it on something else. It's busy. We can't do it. Like, so
well, that's foolish because then the sensationalists win. They make the videos. Oh, it's aliens. It's this lasers back 10,000 years ago. Yeah, they win instead of science winning.
No, they don't win because they're still considered fringe. They're still considered unbelievable by the scientific community. So,
well, by win, I mean they get all the publicity. They make all the sensational videos about it instead of scientists studying the thing for real, putting real effort into it and putting out actual, intelligent information.
If you've watched the movie Contact, you would see that back then, when supposedly that took place, the mainstream scientists saw SETI as a joke and considered that anybody skilled in astrophysics is wasting their career in SETI work.
Yeah.
We haven't advanced much from there. If you went to a prestigious university and said, I would like a grant to study the Osireion complex in Africa to see if it's truly older than the last ice age started, what do you think the odds of you getting grant money would be? Because it would change what we document as history.
Yes,
the only thing that's going to happen
on the other hand, if you can prove that, then that is a pretty big story. I mean, that's maybe Nobel Prize stuff.
It's a self-eating watermelon. If you can prove it, then you've got the grant money. But until you can prove it, it requires extraordinary proof.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
You know what's going to save us? Commercial science. We put something in orbit that does synthetic aperture radar, and you pick the location, and you pay $2,000, and you get yourself detailed radar imagery down to 100 feet. Yeah. Commercial science will bring you that. Mainstream science, well, you got to have a grant. Universities aren't going to give you one, and you're not going to get it from any government. How do you not be fringe? Well, chicken and an egg. So I think that the scientific method will work so long as the observations are allowed to take place.
Yes. Going back to what Joanne's comment before, so if life was delivered here, then it was delivered by somebody from another planet.
Yes.
And then had their life start. And why would they deliver a form of life that's basically pre-fossilization, something that we can't really detect? Oh, here's the first organism.
Well,
and why do they have that? If their planet has advanced, let's say, to the state that we're in or further ahead of us, how do they have that ancient pre-life life?
There are two aspects to the human species that allow us to progress: curiosity and awe. Curiosity is, what's that? What's that all about? You go learn about it, and then when you find out how complex it really is, you have an awe for it and an appreciation for it, and now you want to know more about it. You want to know, does that apply in other ways? And I think that whatever we came from, we have those two things. And so if we came from somewhere else, then those beings from somewhere else had what we have, and therefore they either did one of two things. They either said, we need to go get some natural resources, but we don't want to mine it ourselves. We don't want to grow it ourselves. That's like work. So we created Optimus Primes. We created Optimus robots that were biologic, that would go do the work for us, and therefore we got our mission accomplished. Bye-bye, we're going to leave now. And just they left us behind, kind of like the human species does when we say, let's import some cane toads. Oh, that didn't work out. Well, what are we going to do with the cane toads? Oh, don't worry about them. And now
So they left behind the pre-microbes, knowing that somehow they would have evolved into the complex life.
Here's the other aspect of it. Awe. If you comprehend that you can grow more intelligent biological life forms from simpler things, and you realize that whatever planet you came from, that solar system is doomed within billions of years. You want to be elsewhere. If you have an awe for the complexity of life, and you realize that with your technological advancements, you can reproduce that, you can give it a starter, kickstart elsewhere. You want to be Johnny Appleseed. You want to be going and giving that kickstart to everything that you might consider habitable. Because if it's a random chance, then you want it to be as everywhere as possible, so that if you deliver it to 500,000 worlds, if only 2 or 3 of them actually take root and then start to get advanced beings, but not quite advanced enough, with your skill set in genetics, you can come back and touch things up a bit and then let it go on its own again. So it may be that directed panspermia is the starter kit, but then once we get along so far, they'll come by every so often and touch up things. And we do have a history of unexplained things in the history of the human species where teachers came in and taught us things. And when you ask the locals, where'd the teachers come from? They just point up. And that's multi-generational. So whether you're asking the locals in South America or, indigenous Indian species from the United States, Alaska, you ask them all, well, how did you know how to do this? We were taught. Who taught you? So it may be that, we were kickstarted, but then we were left on our own. And as long as we, kept moving in the right direction, they would come by and look and go, yep, oven's still on, not soup yet. But if we came in and took a left turn or started to nearly wipe ourselves out from a catastrophic cosmic event or a pandemic or something, just a little genetic goosing there, get things back on track again.
So then by that logic, they should be showing up pretty soon to save us from the mess that we're in now.
Either that or they're just disappointed.
No, I think it's actually
if
something
they
else.
invested all that time and energy in us, I think they would want to try to fix things.
I think if it ever got really bad, there would be so few of us left that it would not be recorded history for them to have intervened again. I think what they really would like to see is us advance. They would really like to see that we recognize hurdles and we get over them. Whatever the next hurdle is, we recognize it, we get over it. We deal with the things that stop us from eventually, maybe billions of years from now, being them.
But we're not doing a good job.
Well, opinions vary. We may be going along the exact same path they did, and they're off in the distance, keeping a close eye on us, maybe on a regular basis, maybe on a continuing basis, but we don't have the technology to be able to see them, to detect them. Or, to put it in a science fiction vernacular, they've got their cloaking device turned on.
Yeah.
Mm.
Remember, we look at things and go, that's a rogue black hole that just went by out there in our galaxy. Was it a rogue black hole? Well, it was obscuring things in the background, and it's a rogue, so it's out all by itself. So there's no accretion disk around it. It's just a black spot moving through the sky. Well, there's your cloaking device.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm.
But that's just speculative postulation. The kind of stuff that leads me to exist on the bleeding edge of weird stuff.
Yeah.
I really think there is a lot of merit to the Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker scenario of, if you were told the answer, you wouldn't find the answer acceptable because it changes all that you've known.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just unfortunate. But who is it? Several of the scientists say that the reality of physics is under no obligation to explain itself to you or for you to comprehend it. It just is.
We have to stumble upon it ourselves.
Well, sometimes that's the best way to learn. They will say the best way to learn something is by doing it.
Yeah. And make many mistakes until we finally learn it.
Yes, yes. Intelligence is stepwise refinement. I was actually taught that early on in computer science was when you go write a program, there is no way you're going to write a highly reliable, meeting all expectations program when you first write all the software and you deliver it as a product. Better software is a matter of stepwise refinement. So start out with something that can do almost nothing, a structure, a shell of an application, and then start growing it out. The thing that you want to have in there first is error containment. So if something goes wrong, you have the ability to recover from it, to log it, to document the fact that the software needs the programmer to come in and fix something or, extend something. And then you have feedback from your user community. Hey, what if it did it this way instead of that way? Or could you add this feature? And then you have to, as the developer and computer scientist, understand how all the technology works so that you can fix problems and expand capabilities to meet your customer demand. Well, Tesla's creating intelligent androids along the same lines. And I think about another 20 days, they're going to have the next Optimus event. This time it'll be over in Germany. They're not only going to be building the Optimus robot in the US, they're going to be building it in Germany. And this will be like the third generation of Optimus. See what it can do. I don't know what they're going to show us, but it'll probably be interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions before I stop recording?
No.
Hearing nothing.